Yo, 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 welcome to another episode of Roundball Ramble. I'm your host, Corbin Ford. You can follow me on Twitter at Corbin NBA. Excuse me, the Sports Ethos presentation. So check out Sports Ethos on Twitter at Sports Ethos. Pretty simple. SPORTSETHOS or online sportsethos.com. Again, great coverage, variety of teams, multitude of sports, not just, of course, the real world application, but also the fantasy perspective on many of these sports. So, and the betting side as well. So, you're definitely doing yourself a disservice if you're not checking that out. Please do again on Twitter. Sports Ethos on Twitter at Sports Ethos, online sportsethos.com. Also, in addition to that, please, y'all, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. I appreciate any feedback, good, bad, ugly, indifferent. I really don't care. All of it helps me to improve. That is the goal. And that's what we're going to do on this show. So definitely make sure to do that. And I got one more thing here for y'all. Manscaped's back, baby. Just like the NBA's been back, so is Manscaped. It's only getting to the top, to the midway point of the season for both. All right. You got the All-Star game coming up. Manscaped has a little All-Star deal for you. Just use the coupon code HoopBall20. That's HOOPBALL20, HoopBall20 to get 20% off plus free shipping on your purchase at manscaped.com. Make sure to take advantage of that, especially now, Valentine's Day is coming up. That's all I'm going to say. HoopBall20, get your Manscaped 20% off. All right. So today as y'all listen, as I record, I'm looking forward to just having another fun conversation, talking about some teams that, for better or worse, are interesting. And I'm doing this with my friend Anirudh. You can find him here on the pod. If you're close enough to as a friend as I am, maybe you'll be fortunate to get his number and exchange some basketball takes. Otherwise, you have to take it here. But it's a great privilege of mine to have him on here today with Roundball Ramble. Anirudh, how you doing, bro?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing okay considering, been kind of in and out, kind of sick. COVID's obviously not been kind. I know you talking about that recently, this past month with yourself. And weirdly enough, during the night times actually worse. Like,
Oh yeah, same thing for me.
oh my
In the mornings,
gosh.
I was felt great, and then right around like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock starts, I could feel it.
Yep, exactly. So right now, like I'm getting the pain, like body pain, usually in the back and the neck. So far my throat's been fine, but usually that'll start filling up. It's been pretty rough I've been trying to do some podcasting the last like couple days now, but I've been sick for the last like week and a half. And it's like, well, even I want to make sure I'm not like obviously making the quality of my work kind of be diminished because I'm not able to do it. But at the same time, like I'm driving myself crazy just sitting, you know, in the house all day, not doing anything. But yeah, nighttime, which is usually the best time for me to record, is always bad. So hoping to power through on this one and have a good one, bro. But aside from that, man, just taking in a lot of basketball. It's been like the one positive of this whole horrific experience.
Yeah, there have been some pretty good games, so at least in the last couple of weeks. There have been some questionable ones too, but the good games have been fun.
You know what? You said the best. The good games have indeed been fun. So with that, let's kind of go into it. Let's start where we already said we're just going to make a nice casual conversation on what we've been watching. Both been watching a lot of basketball, both trying to figure out kind of what we're into in terms, not what we're into, both trying to figure out like making sense of certain teams given their situation. Obviously context. The Lakers, benching Russell Westbrook with the final 3 minutes of the game. Does that mean something, nothing, or everything? The Mavericks, like you said, improving their defense. Like, what's that about? So we're just kind of going to go in team by team for a few things that interest us. And we're going to start with you. So what you got going on? What was the first team that caught your eye these past couple of weeks here?
So, as the resident Mavs fan, I think it's only fair to start with the Mavs. But I think they're genuinely intriguing, not because they're suddenly good again, but it's more that the way they're doing it is very different than what people expect. So for the last 2 years, the Mavs have been this offensive force who entire goal was just to outscore you. They wouldn't defend. They were the team that like opposing role players would come in and get career highs in.
Yep,
Like I
you always
swear,
have
every
one of
time we
those.
played the Warriors, Kelly Oubre would like score 40 on us.
Wow.
But that's what the Mavs were. They were a defensive liability, and offensively, they were good.
Mm-hmm.
And this year, Jason Kidd comes in, and yeah, everyone's saying, oh, he wants to improve the defense. Well, yeah, Rick Carlisle said the same thing, and it's not like it really changed much. And you could tell early in the year, like they were definitely trying out a new scheme and they were trying harder. They just weren't that good.
Mhm.
But there was that Pacers game back in December where Luka goes down with an ankle injury. They lose that game. And then that's when he goes into COVID immediately after that. And the team starts signing a bunch of random guys, Charlie Brown, some old vets, IT, Brandon Knight, and the whole COVID thing's going on. And you kind of expect that the team's going to take a bad turn, but no, they actually
Mhm.
turned the corner. They went 5-5 without Luka and a lot of their key guys. And they've been red hot. And it's been all defense. Like their offense is middle of the pack, and Luka hasn't been that good at getting his shots, but they've been a defensive juggernaut right now. And the thing is, they don't have some all defense caliber player. It's not like they have an AD or Rudy Gobert or Draymond Green. They have KP and a bunch of solid role players.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing for me. And I wanted to look into it, like see, okay, why is their defense working? Because obviously you can look at it and say, like, okay, numerically their defense is good, but maybe there's a bunch of shooting luck or anything. Like with the Nets, for instance, their defense looks really good on paper, but there's a lot of shooting luck going on.
Yeah. Something. Yeah.
So
True.
I went through the Mavericks, and I think there's a little bit of shooting luck, but it's not crazy. So what the whole point of the new scheme is basically like, okay, your bigs are going to be a lot higher towards the screen. They're going to be showing a lot more, shrink the floor, and then just being a lot better at rotating so that you protect the paint and just shrink the floor. They're not worrying too much about onside shots. So like they're pre-rotating a lot more to try to take away the offense's primary option and
Mhm.
force them into that kind of next option or the next play. And they're double teaming a little more, but when they are double teaming, their backline rotations have been pretty solid. And in general, like their defense went from being like this, we're just going to react to whatever you're doing. And now they're a defense that actually kind of forces the opponents into bad shots. And like the data backs it up too. So they've been one of the best in terms of opponent shot quality. So they're forcing the right kind of shots. Last year, they were one of the worst teams at defending the pick and roll. Dame Lillard can tell you all about that. He, I still run that bubble game where he dropped like 50 on a, it was crazy. And the Mavs couldn't do anything. And this year, they're pretty good. Uh, Last year, when you had help defenders on your opponent's drives, they were last in the NBA. This year, they're middle of the pack. Among players who at least defended 100 drives, KP's number 10 and Maxi Kleber's 17th. So those two have been really good at that. And KP has been a really good weak side help defender. Last year was kind of a down year for him, but this year he's been genuinely one of the best rim protectors. And in the entire league, he's ranked number 4 right now in terms of opponent effective field goal percentage at the rim. The top 5 are Giannis, JaVale. Um, yeah, I think Suns need to rethink signing Ayton. I think JaVale McGee is pretty good.
Mhm.
Uh, Jarrett Jackson Jr., KP, and Rudy Gobert. So that's some elite company. And even the two big lineups, which have been a sore spot for many Mavs fans, where you have KP at the power forward. But on defense, they're actually working out pretty well because you have Cleveland and Powell, who are both kind of mobile enough so that they can afford to be a little more aggressive in their pick and roll coverage.
Yeah.
And KP usually ends up getting the easier defensive assignment so he can just roll and protect the paint. And they've added a little more length. So you have guys like Dorian Finney-Smith, Josh Green, who can just be these mobile wing protectors who can move a lot better. And they're rebounding a lot better with all that size. They're third right now in defensive rebounding. And the big thing is everyone's just buying in. Like Jalen Brunson, small guy who
Isn't really
obviously isn't going
known
to be
for
an
that.
elite defender.
Yeah.
And he's an amazing charge taker. Like he's becoming Kyle Lowry at this point, just constantly pissing off the opponent and being in the right spot. And even if it's not a charge, like he's orchestrating it, trying to be in the right spot, and he has good hands. Luka's doing the same thing, just constantly. We know Luka's never going to be an elite defender. He's not going to be this two-way player. But
Mhm.
with his size, he can still be a solid defender, at least neutral, and that's what he's been doing this year.
That's true. That's true. I mean, I like the fact that you even said that they're getting impact. They're not getting impact. They're getting contributions from those who you don't normally look at as defensive pieces at all. I mean, I don't look at Jalen Brunson. I think he's like someone who can like do his best to capably defend his position. But I don't look at him as someone who's like very good at that. And you've been mentioning the impact he's been having on that end as well.
Yeah, and like it's a buy-in thing where, let's be honest, like if your best player is, if Luka was to just give up on defense, I don't think many people would criticize him just because he's such a good offensive player. Your star player kind of gets that privilege. But when you have your star player playing defense and playing really hard on defense, it just makes everyone else feel like they have to step it up too. And that's what's been going on with this team.
That's true. That's true. I like that you brought that up. I like the fact that I've not been aware of their defense specifically, and that you brought some really good nuggets about how well they played on that end of the floor. And speaking of nuggets, I actually want to kind of transition and talk a little bit about the Denver Nuggets, who, you know, they just recently lost. I'm recording this on the night of the 21st. Probably dropping this when you listen to this either over the weekend or Monday. But the point being is that they lost to the Memphis Grizzlies, 122 to 118. And the reason I'm bringing this up is the offense for the Nuggets was kind of rough. Like it was here and there. It was definitely a game of runs. But I just feel like Jokic is still having to do way too much. You know, the guy had to turn it up in the third quarter for the second straight game, had near triple-double after 3 quarters of action, 22 points, 9 rebounds, 9 assists. The Nuggets needed everything that Jokic had to provide. He ultimately finished with 26 points, 12 assists, and 11 rebounds, and get this, 40 minutes of action. It was kind of crazy. And this was just showing how bad it was. They didn't get a lot of help from the bench at all. Bryn Forbes made his Nuggets debut. He knocked down 2 of his first 3 shots, but after that, he struggled in the next 3 quarters and only finished with 9 points on 4-13 shooting. Zeke Naji had 8 points, but those two literally combined for all 15 of Denver's second unit points because Bones Highland and Facundo Campazzo just couldn't get it going. And speaking of Campazzo, over his last 22 games, he's shooting 34.2% from the field, but still playing over 24.8 minutes per game. Shout out to @Bronco Squatch for that stat. The last Denver Nugget besides Facu to shoot that poorly but still get as many total minutes over any 22-game span was Emmanuel Mudiay in the 2015-2016 season. If y'all remember Emmanuel Mudiay that year, he was not. I mean, he's not a good offensive player now, but I think he's more in line with the strengths then. But back then, he was taking a lot of shots and just not making them. So I think my concern for Denver comes to a lack of consistent offensive production from night to night, aside from Nikola Jokic. I mean, they did bring in, of course, the aforementioned Bryn Forbes. They did bring in DeMarcus Cousins. So, you know, Jeff Green's had his moments as well throughout this season. Like they have guys that I guess you look at, Will Barton, of course, and you go, okay, like your offense should be just enough. I'm not saying that this is like by any stretch like an electric, you know, just fiery offensive attack, but it at least should be better than what it is. And right now, in a troubling trend over the last couple of games, that's not what we're seeing here. You know, their shooting splits have not been great. The numbers that are coming from the perimeter guys outside of Jokic aren't super great. I mean, Aaron Gordon's not a knockdown marksman anyway, and he actually had a decent game. 16 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists, but on 4 of 11 shooting. You know, Will Barton had a decent game as well, 27 points to lead the Nuggets. But aside from that, you can't just beat Barton, Jokic, and whatever you get from the combination of Jeff Green and Aaron Gordon. That's not going to be enough consistently, despite how great Nikola Jokic has been.
Yeah, with Jokic on the floor, the Nuggets have the best point differential in the NBA. And without him, they have the worst. So
wow,
Jokic is kind of their entire team at this point. And it's kind of what happens when you don't have Jamal Murray or Michael Porter Jr. Like, this team is really bare of just creation outside of Jokic. Like, Will Barton can do a little bit, but he's not that guy that you really want creating.
No, not
Aaron
really.
Gordon, we've seen that what he does on the Magic for the last like 4 years if he tries to create. So you don't want him doing that. And a lot of their guys are just being forced to be creators. And unfortunately, none of them really have that skill set. Like even Bones Highland. Bones is a guy who wants to get his own get his own shot. He's not really looking to make plays for other people. Facundo Campazzo, great playmaker, but he's kind of like Rondo. No one cares about his offense. It's more just he's going to pass. So this team is just really struggling to find anything when Jokic sits. But also, even with Jokic, like you can just double him, and 9 times out of 10, it's like they're going to miss. So it doesn't matter if he kicks it out to someone. And unfortunately, there's just the answer is bring back Murray and Michael Porter, but we know why they're out.
Exactly. Is there anything you think they can do to like paper over? Obviously, you're not going to get offensive gold mines off the scrap heap. I'm not saying that. Like, I'm sure there's plenty of talented scorers in G League, of course, free agents who want to come in, but while also just not being complete non-entities on the defensive end. You know, you're looking at Murray and Porter Jr. possibly being out for the whole year. I guess there's some talk that they could come back, but that's not at all a given. So you are looking again at, I mean, a lot of guys who are not scores in that sense, having to do a ton on that end. I mean, of your Nugget scores right now, of course, Jokic having 25, 13, and 7. After that, Will Barton at 15 per game, Aaron Gordon at 14, Monte Morris at 12. And Jeff Green gives you 10. And those last three guys, you know, Gordon, Morris, and Green are kind of hot and cold in terms of their point production. You know, I wouldn't say you always get a 10 points from Jeff Green. You get like a solid, I'd say 8 to 10 points, and sometimes like a really good 34-point performance. You know, Aaron Gordon's sort of the same thing, although I guess he's more consistent in that way. But you're not getting, like you said, great, like consistent shooting / scoring from these guys, with the exception of Will Barton, who's fine, but you don't really want the ball in his hands, like you said, the entire time. I mean, by his standards, like over his career, this year will be tied with his age 27 for 27 year for the most assists he's had in a season for a game. Like, that's not really his game. You know what I mean? He's someone who's trying to get a bucket. And the funny thing about this as well is that this would also be, for as much as we look at Barton as a bucket maker, this would also be tied, well, actually just behind that age 27 season again, as the most points he's averaged in a season. So that, I mean, a lot of these guys, I think Nuggets wise, are kind of overextending themselves here a little bit.
Yeah, this just wasn't the role they were built for. Like last year, we saw it where once you have Jamal Murray and Michael Porter, Aaron Gordon could just be this cutter who moves off the ball, sets screens, and just is this dynamic lob threat.
Yeah, occasionally stick a three.
Yeah, occasionally be a spot-up shooter or be a short roll passer. Like that was his role, just not being this on-ball creator all the time. But right now, he's being forced to be that creator. Same thing with Will Barton. He wouldn't have to be that. So I don't know. It depends on like what the Nuggets want to do. If they really want to try going for it and actually like try to make a push for the playoffs, I would look into maybe trying to trade for someone like Eric Gordon, just another shooter who can create a little bit and is a gritty defender. But if I'm them, like I don't know what the Jamal Murray situation is. If they think he can come back and they're comfortable with that, then I'd be more inclined to make a move like that. Otherwise, I kind of just take a step back this year and say, like, hey, let's give Bones Highland some more run. Let's let Monty Morris run a little bit more and just let the young guys play a little bit and just see what you can do and what these pieces are. Because eventually you are going to need to consolidate some of them. So better just showcase them a little bit right now.
I'm with that. If you think that happens, are you saying that I mean, obviously we don't expect a huge, like super deep playoff run for them. So we're kind of saying they kind of concede this year, like go to the playoffs, second exit, make it what it is going to be, but like really try to give more confidence and more of a chance for these guys to kind of soak up some minutes? Or do you think that the Nuggets should kind of do something come trade deadline, whether it's looking at someone like a Justin Holiday or Robert Covington, or even somebody I think they should look at for offensive punch, although he hasn't had a super great offensive year, in a Terrence Ross?
Yeah, like I think it depends on like Jamal Murray. So if they think Jamal Murray is going to come back and they're comfortable, then I'd trade for those guys. I think Justin Holiday is in expiring, so I wouldn't mind trading for him anyway. But in general, it's like if you think Jamal Murray is going to come back and be some semblance of himself, then yeah, make a push for it. The race is still wide open. So I would be fine with that. But if they know something, if they're not sure about Jamal Murray or what he's going to be, then I just look to take a step back. Like Jokic, my other worry is like if you overburden him right now throughout the season, what's he
Mhm.
going to be in the playoffs? Is it just going to be worse? Because we saw it in that Portland series. He had to do everything just for them to survive, and then when he got, by the time he got to the Suns, he's exhausted.
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing left. I mean, the guy was literally the gas in the tank of this Nuggets team for the duration of the season just to get them that point. So yeah, now you're running on fumes. No one else has still stepped up in his absence or to take off his what is it called? To take off his like load, so you still have these issues. I don't know. I think it's gonna be very interesting to kind of see where they go, and what moves the Nuggets make at the trade deadline. But I am concerned about that, the load that Jokic does have to carry, and whether or not that could be lessened some point without just having to rely on the return of Michael Porter Jr. and of course Jamal Murray sometime in the 2022-2023 season.
Yeah,
We'll
but I
see how
think
it goes.
the thing about the Nuggets is we just kind of know what they are at this point. There's not much left to do. It's just hope that your guys come back.
Yeah, yeah. But I think that's the bottom line there. But along from that, let's go to your next team and see what you want to go from.
Are you ready to do the Lakers? Or do you want to wait?
Oh my gosh! Listen, if you want to get into them, let's get into them. You know what? Let's do that. Let's do your next team, and then we can both do Lakers. So the Lakers are on my list too. So we'll do that one as a tandem.
Okay, that's fine. Want to talk about the Celtics?
Now you're talking my alley. Let's do it.
Okay, so
Uh-huh.
seems okay defensively.
Mhm.
Their offense just it looks bad.
Yes, their offense is ugly. I mean, for one, it's isolation heavy. It's either isolation for Jason Tatum, isolation for Jaylen Brown, isolation for Dennis Schroeder. And then occasionally, when there's no other options and you're looking at a shot clock violation or shooting over five people, then they'll make a pass. Dennis Schroeder more likely than the other two. But the point being, it's not cool. Like I was watching the game against the Pelicans and I was like, oh my gosh, like when it's on, it's still not pretty to watch, but like okay, it shows the one-on-one greatness and the shot making of their two wings and the fact that Dennis Schroeder can still get to the lane and is an okay shooter. But like aside from that, I mean, like Grant Williams, Al Horford, they're just there. You know what I mean? For the most part. You can say the same thing for Time Lords. Their bench has not been, I think, given the type of encouragement needed to be actual like rotation level play with the confidence and shot making ability because they are not living up to the hype they had when they were drafted for the Celtics team. I think some of that's a lack of confidence that has been attributed to them on this squad with their role on this roster. And I just haven't been a fan of anything that's been going on there. Like Ime Udoka, definitely been throwing guys on the bus. I feel like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have had some tension in terms of how they played. They have not been good passers. I think Udoka was trying to like make them be good passers. That's not going to happen. I think that some guys just aren't that way. And they seem like they're very much tunnel vision, first, second, and third choices all to shoot. And that's unfortunate. But yeah, you're right. It makes the offense just very, very hard to um come to grips with in terms of looking at this team and saying, you know what, this is a team I can see in the second round or of the playoffs. I definitely don't see them making the conference finals. And I really honestly barely see them getting out the first round. I think it's gonna be first round fodder again.
So if I were to ask you who you think their best playmaker is, what would be your answer?
Yeah, shooter. And that's saying a lot because I never ever look at Dennis Schroeder from back when he was with the Hawks, of course the Thunder, of course the Lakers. I don't look at Dennis Schroeder as a good playmaker. I think it's from seeing him miss countless lobs over and over and over to Anthony Davis last year with the Lakers. But like Dennis Schroeder, I think will get you like at least numbers wise 4 to 5 assists a game. I think he can make plays off the pick and roll. He's looking at the pick and roll to really come up firing, but he can do that. But he would be the guy I look at as the best playmaker on this roster. I'm looking back just to make sure I'm not getting anything like any guy I'm obviously missing. But if not him, Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart to me is more of a wing than a point guard. And yeah, that's kind of it. What do you think?
I was going to go with the bigs, Al Horford and Robert Williams. Like I genuinely think they're the best
Yeah,
playmakers.
that's true. I can't overlook them. You're right about that, especially from the elbows, both those guys. I guess I'll look at them like that because they're not being played that way. Like, you know what I mean? They're not They're
Yeah,
not.
and I know that was my point. Is that like I think those two are the best playmakers on this team, but they're not running their offense through them
No.
until occasionally. I think they did it one game where I can't remember who it was against, but Robert Williams just looked fantastic. He was running things through the elbow, and it was perfect. And then they
So
went away from it the
I was
next
gonna
game,
say,
and it's
so of
like, what the
course they
hell
had
are
to
you
switch
doing?
it up. Yeah, that's
You
an interesting
found
take.
gold, and you're ignoring it.
But okay, so in that vein, here's my question to you. Do you think, I mean, obviously you have to lay some of that at the head of Coach Udoka, right? But do you also think that maybe the wings, specifically Brown and Tatum, weren't comfortable with that or didn't want to do it that way? Like I'm wondering why they would make such a marked departure from a style of working well to kind of go back to the isocentric style that they have, unless of course the star players prefer that route.
I mean, obviously, it's not going to come out publicly, but I have a feeling that's why it's not happening.
Yeah.
Um, like even Brad Stevens would do that with like Gordon Hayward, or when he had Al Horford before, he would do it with through him. So it's not like Brad's an idiot and doesn't know what he's doing. He knows, and I'm pretty sure he's telling Ime Duncan to do it. But if your lead scorers and your star players are both guys who are ISO heavy and kind of just score first, it's hard to play a different style. And when it comes to the young guys, like I know Celtics fans are upset that they traded away Desmond Bain, but if we're being honest, like let's say they kept him, would Desmond Bain still be the same player? I don't think so. I don't, because in Memphis he got the freedom to try out new things, be
Mhm.
more than just a spot up guy. In summer league, they let him be this on ball creator, and it's been working wonders for them because when Jaw's out, he gets to expand his game a little bit. And I think for the Celtics guys, you're seeing guys like Aaron Nesmith, who's supposed to be this movement shooter. Well, when your stars are just isoing, there's no need for you to even try moving off the ball because you're not going to get it. So a lot of these players, I just think their skills aren't being developed anyway when they're in games. And when all you do is just spot up, and if you miss, it just makes it much worse on you and it ruins your confidence. So I think they need to, if they really want to, they have all these young guys on the roster. I think they need to really start thinking about like how do we start engaging them, because unless they look like, even if you want to trade them, like there's not much value in any of those guys right now just because they haven't played that well. I think it was a mistake letting go of Hayward. Hayward was the kind of guy you need. So if you look at the Bulls, they have uh, Levine and DeRozan, two guys who are score first. Although DeRozan has become a much better playmaker, but in
Very true.
general,
Yeah.
there are these two wings who are very score first. So how do you alleviate that? One, you bring in Vucevic, who you can run your offense through pretty comfortably. He's a good
Hmm.
playmaker. And then you bring this pass first point guard, Lonzo. So obviously Lonzo would be a perfect fit in Boston, but even a guy like Ricky Rubio, I think would be great there. Just someone whose job it is to set everything up, because
A table setter.
if you're all you're going to do is let Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown run side ISOs over and over again, your offense is predictable and it's a waste of time. Unless their shots are falling, their offense is useless.
I agree. And I guess, I mean, here's the thing though. There's so much more I think wrong. I mean, we've kind of put the nail on the head in terms of the dysfunctional offense, but even when they're cold, they lost. Well, I was recording this tonight. They lost to the Blazers 109-105. They failed to make a field goal in the final 7 minutes of the game. And unrelated note, but also related, Jason Tatum has now missed 20 consecutive 3-pointers. Like, wow. You know what I mean? The last field goal Boston made came with 7:19 left in the game. Peyton Pritchard nailed a three off of, like you said, an assist from Al Horford. That gave the Celtics a 9-point lead. Portland went on an 11-0 run to tie it. Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum combined to make 5 free throws over the remainder of the game, but that was literally it. And this scoring drought was for the third time in the past 25 years. The Celtics failed to make a field goal over the final 7 minutes of the game. The last time this happened was in 2010 against OKC. Like, I don't understand it. And even Coach Udoka, I don't know why I keep saying Udoka. I mean to say Udoka, but he keeps saying And it's like some of it does kind of coaching, some of this goes down the plane. But I think as a coach, you need to know like when to kind of assign the blame and when to temper it back. He always has to throw the players in it as well. He's like disappointment, coaching staff as well as players. Obviously, we had turned somewhat of a corner lately in fourth quarters. It felt like we took a step back, and it's true. Like this was cold. This was a cold game, and when you're doing so much from isolation, it makes your looks tougher. And if you look at Tatum, just specifically over the month of January, he's shooting 26% from deep, and on the season, shooting a career worst 31% from downtown. That is just better than Russell Westbrook. Like, it's not great. And like you said, a lot of this comes down to shooting stones, but they're not being helped because you're not getting freed for easy looks. Like, it's not saying, okay, next game, let's park, let's do split cuts, from elbow plays off from Horford. You know what I mean? Like, there's no ways that the Celtics are trying to manufacture good looks for these guys. All right, we'll try again next game. Let's see what happens. Maybe the ISO shots will start going down. I look at this Boston team right now. Right now, only 3.5 games separate them and number 6 Philadelphia, which is where the Celtics need to get, obviously, to avoid the play-in tournament. And they do have the 5th-ranked defense, which has helped them enough. But I see them in the play-in team. I think they'll continue to slide because I do agree with you. Like, the offense is kind of a problem. And it's not just a problem because of the fact that when it's not working. But it's also a problem because it's not exactly building morale. These guys out there know that, hey, I'm just going to be rebounding the ball. You know what I mean? Or, hey, let me shoot the ball when I get it because who knows if I'll get it again. Like it's a lot going on that I think is unfortunate, but I don't know. It's just it's a mess for me.
Yeah, I think like the archetype of player that Tatum is in general just like a hard one to run your offense through. Like the one guy who really makes it work is Kevin Durant, and Kevin Durant's an alien. Like his efficiency makes no sense at all. And Tatum is not Kevin Durant. So if you're a scoring wing who's not a good playmaker, and to be fair, Kevin Durant's a lot better than he was back in OKC, and especially with the Warriors. Like he's a much better playmaker, but he's still not a LeBron James. He's not a James Harden. He's not this lead playmaker, but he's good enough. But you're more comfortable running that ISO style for him because he's really efficient at it. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown aren't elite isolation players by any stretch. So running an ISO heavy offense for them is just doubling down on something that's not that good. And if you're a young guy, like let's say you're Aaron Nesmith or Romeo Langford, whoever, and you hustled and you play good defense and you're able to get a steal, and you immediately throw to Jason Tatum, and the first thing he does once he gets to 3-point line is take a step back 3. That would piss you off because
yeah, it really would.
Like I did all this work, and the first thing you're gonna do is just gonna shoot it. We're not even gonna like try running something. And in general, it's just like your best players have to be more willing to either you have to be good enough to where like no one can say anything back to you, a la Kevin Durant, even James Harden. Like James Harden was an elite isolation scorer. So all the times he got criticized for being this ISO heavy player, at least it was working. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are not James Harden. They're not Kevin Durant. They're not these elite isolation players that you can afford giving them all these isolations to. You need a lead playmaker. Hayward would have been great. Lonzo Ball would have been great. Ricky Rubio, just any of these like pass first guys who can be on ball or off the ball.
Yeah. You said it. Just and I guess I go the same way that I went before when I asked you about when we were just talking about teams in the past. Here, it's weird. I feel like every time I bring up a squad, I'm gonna have to ask this question. But like, just like Denver, can Boston make a move during this trade deadline season to rectify this? Who would you look for them to target? Are we looking for a guy off the buyout market? Are we looking for, like you said, a player like Ricky Rubio would have been perfect, except unfortunately that's no longer a possibility. Like what kind of pass first kind of floor setting guard are we looking for? And not like, I don't want to say floor setting isn't like can't score, but like also not Alfred Payton or something like that. You know what I mean? Like someone easily attainable that's going to help them out.
So one of the things I was thinking about was a Marcus Smart for Joe Ingles swap. I think it solves issues on both teams. So for the Celtics, you get a guy who's a pass first, can score, who's an elite shooter, who can play on or off the ball, and he's still a really good pick and roll player. And he's got size and he has that old man strength to where he's not a liability on defense. And for Utah, you get a point of attack defender, which I will go on a rant if I hear one more time that Gobert is not a good defender because he can't defend the perimeter.
He
Like,
gets put off
no,
the floor. You see this.
every time I hear that Gobert is not worthy of being a defensive player of the year because he can't guard, he gets abused and he gets played off the floor. It's like, no, he doesn't get played off the floor. Everyone else on the Jazz can't do anything on defense other than Royce O'Neal, and he's undersized. Gobert is not Kevin Garnett, who can move in all directions and just be this one-man defense. There's a limit to what you can do.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, I think that Gobert, I will say I've thought that Gobert in the past has and continues to sometimes be overrated. However, I also agree with you. Like, the magic that Kevin Garnett had on the defensive end is not to just be applied to everybody. Least of all, Rudy Gobert, all due respect to him. And with that being said, you're right. Like, you can't lay all that at the feet of him for the inability of anyone else, literally anyone else on the Utah Jazz, to defend.
Yeah, I don't want to go down the path of the Jazz.
You're like, I plead the fifth
if I
on
do
that.
that.
I feel you.
I'm not doing that. But yeah, with the Celtics, I think a move like that where you trade for Smart for Joe Ingles, I think would be an interesting idea. But if you lose Marcus Smart, who's kind of like your leader, what happens to the team? Because he's the one guy who's not been afraid to call anyone out when they screw up. And I think you need a guy like that on every team. So if you lose him, or Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum could have someone to fight back against them, or will they be the guys who can step up and be that leader?
I don't know. I guess the very sound that, because I'm not sure. I mean, what do you? Like, is that one available? I guess, right? Like, is that player out there that can come in, demand the respect of the locker room, and still perform the assigned duties that this team needs? I think ultimately, like we say, passing, and we say, getting the ball worked around and being part of a unit. But honestly, I think they need leadership. And it's not a knock on Tatum or Brown to say they're not good leaders, but like, I don't think that they are.
Yeah. You want to do a Russell Westbrook trade to the Celtics?
You know what? If you could put the framework to that, absolutely. That would be the leader that they want. They know Russ wakes up around this time of the season, especially with an underwhelming roster. Absolutely. But no, I think speaking of Russ, it's probably time to have that conversation on it.
I'll just let you start off. This will be our therapy session for you. Just unload everything.
I appreciate this, but okay, so here we go. I think I'm in a better mood as of right now. The Lakers having beaten the Orlando Magic, which I really shouldn't be saying. This should be like a custom. The Magic are 8-36 or something. Like, this should be something that should be a given, but it's not. Were this a? I'm trying to find the word I want to say. Basically, we're recording this 2 days earlier. My emotions would be a lot more on edge. I'd be a lot more frustrated, convinced that Frank Vogel would be fired, and that Russ honestly just is not going to make a difference on this team. And I bemoan the fact that he was always a square peg in a round hole that's been unjustly criticized and forced to be something more than he's ever shown in his 14 years. And that's still a very good player. It would be a lot more frustration. Right now, it is not that, but I guess such is the life of a Lakers fan, in that your mood changes as the team does, as the wins come and go. And right now you're looking at a 500 team. I feel like a 500 fan, like, I just don't understand. I do, but I don't, how we thought that Frank Vogel would be the issue when he missed 6 games. And in that duration, interim coach, David Fisdale came in and went 1-5, like, defensively, it's not on the coach to make this work, in as much as Vogel's had blame on. Like, yes, Vogel has made some dumb decisions. He had Rondo and Westbrook together for stretches when there was absolutely no need to play those two in the backcourt ever, with better options available. He was dedicated to DJ to a fault when it was very obvious the guy was running on fumes in terms of his contribution on that end. His rotation was
Wait up!
always.
Don't tell Kurt Rambis that.
Oh my
He's still convinced you need to
gosh.
play Dwight Howard and DeAndre Jordan at the same time.
And this is why Kurt Rambis is. Oh, I have thoughts. Kurt Rambis is not. He's just not a good coach. He's just. I don't understand what in Kurt Rambis's post NBA playing career has led people to think that he is a basketball mind to the degree of, oh, let's let this guy run our franchise in any capacity as a player or executive. Like, that is not what I've seen in any of his stops with the Lakers beforehand, with the Knicks, and now again back with the Lakers. Like, I just haven't seen it. So I'm not sure where this power that he has is. Even if we look at his wife Linda Rambis as her having the power, that's fine. Kurt can be somewhere alongside that, but doesn't mean that Kurt assumes it. But going aside from that, don't even get me started on that, Anirudh. I'm so annoyed by that. But basically, going back to Vogel, like, yes, he's not made the smartest of coaching decisions in the past. Like, that's like, he hasn't. It just isn't been a thing. However, like, he's also not the one that tells Russell Westbrook to down every screen. He's also not the one that has LeBron putting together superhuman offensive efforts, but indifferent at best defensive efforts. He's not the guy that's had injuries racked up and down the roster, still not having the service of Kendrick Nunn, not having AD for a large part of the year, not having Trevor Ariza for 30 plus games this season. Like, there's been injuries that peppered this roster that he hasn't had his full complement of players. And also, I might add, if he did have all these players, it would still be an identity that is counterintuitive to the way that Coach Vogel likes to run a team, which is defensive-minded first and foremost. And this, I think, goes on the head of Rob Pelinka. And we've seen him now, won a championship in 2020. And 3 years since then, he's totally remade the team. Won a championship in 2020, having a defensive-minded unit with LeBron James at the helm of the offense and just enough three-point shooting to make things work. Next season, no, we need additional help on the offensive end and someone to run the offense when LeBron's resting and to try to alleviate some of the pressure he has on that end. So let's bring in Dennis Schroeder. Let's bring in Montrezl Harrell. Okay. Also, let's bring in Marc Gasol. Who cares about fit? It's all 2K. We'll make it work. But then it doesn't, right? Okay. Mid-season. Injuries were also a thing, by the way. COVID was also a thing, but we need more help. Let's bring in another big name. Let's bring in Andre Drummond. Despite the fact that Andre Drummond didn't fit in any way, shape, or form, let's bring him alongside. He'll play with AD. Don't worry, it's fine. He's a star. They're a star. It'll all work out. Yes, we're talking about backup center Andre Drummond for the Philadelphia 76ers right now, but it'll work out fine. It did not work out fine, right? Then this up last year, Pelinka says, nope, let's do it again. Let's rewrite the books. Let's make it happen. We're going to go all offense, double the offense, like, just totally deplete the defense. We're not going to bring Alex Caruso back. He can go. We're going to trade every other competent defender we have. We're looking at Contavious Caldwell-Pope. We're looking at Kyle Kuzma. We're also going to throw in Montrezl Harrell. We're all going to do it for Russell Westbrook. Why? It'll work out. He's a star. They're a star. They'll make it work, right? Just bringing a bunch of shooting. And some of that was good. I do like the addition of Malik Monk. I like the idea of bringing in a Kendrick Nunn. Having Kent Bazemore, like other guys there. Like, I didn't like the fit, but I like the idea of having shooting across the board. That hasn't realized the way it should have, with the exception of Malik Monk, who's been really, really well. I've really enjoyed the way he's come on this season. But I say all this to say that Rob Pelinka has been the one that's constantly meddling with the team, trying to change the identity each and every year. And in this case, poor Vogel, who has not been the greatest of coaches, but has been one of the more successful ones in recent memory for the Lakers, has had to foot the bill and the pressure and the blame for how this works out. And it's unfortunate that it's the case, but it is. And so looking at all of that, I don't know. I'm annoyed that we constantly have to deal with this. But at the same time, I guess it comes with the territory of the Lakers. But, like, I don't see how this gets fixed because short of Rob Pelinka firing himself or, firing Vogel and then having, whatever scapegoat coach after that and then pressure going on his head, I'm just not sure how we look and rectify this issue. I don't know what they do during the trade deadline because, as been mocked and joked relentlessly, as everyone's done to me, like, you have Taylor Horn Tucker, who has been, at best inconsistent, at worst a 25% three-point shooter, who's had games that of I would say varying effectiveness. You have Kendrick Nunn, who hasn't played all year and has a player option for next season. They have a 2027 first round pick. And as the joke's been commonly said, that person is probably in the 8th grade right now. So you have a lot of issues there in terms of that being a package for someone like, let's say, a Jeremy Grant or I don't know, John Hollins. I'm throwing out examples just to show how ludicrous this idea that this package would get those players when in a trade market where you have a lot of buyers and very little sellers, that even competes with even the mid-tier trade packages, much less the upper echelon tier of trades. So I guess I'm doing like a 4-minute eulogy of the Lakers, even as I'm still hoping against all hope that AD comes back healthy, that Russell Westbrook, gets into his personal basketball playing calendar of right now really become one of the best players in the NBA, and Lakers is rattling off like a 10-game win streak. But I just don't see it. This team just reeks of dysfunction, but in the worst possible way. And I really feel bad for like a LeBron who's playing amazing. I feel bad for like a Melo who's actually been adopting his role and doing just fine with that. I feel bad for a Ken Bazemore who's been out the rotation but is still doing well. Like there's a bunch of guys there that are on this roller coaster from hell for the Lakers, and it's like it sucks, but I don't know how they rectify that. Nothing's forthcoming to me right now.
Yeah, the Lakers are. God, I hate watching this team. If I have to see Russell Westbrook,
you said I hate watching this team. Uh-huh.
I mean, I'm a huge Westbrook fan. Like, I love that OKC team, and I never want to like see Westbrook play terrible, but it's kind of just been
part of the course.
An awkward, like, I think the thing that makes it worse is just because everyone knew how bad of a fit this was going to be. There was some hope that you just had all this talent that could maybe figure it out, but even like you were saying earlier that like we still need to see what Kendrick Nunn looks like. It's like if you're relying on Kendrick Nunn at this point, you're done. Your roster is not good enough. No. Kendrick Nunn is a missing piece that's supposed to activate this roster. No, that's not it. Same thing with Trevor Ariza. So the only way this team at current form is able to compete in the playoffs is AD comes back and is that defensive player of the year caliber player. He hasn't been that at all this year. So maybe it's whatever this injury is, it's just part of that. But if he comes back and is that player, Lakers have a shot, regardless of Westbrook, just because you have LeBron who's playing at his best right now, and you have a top 5, top 10 player in AD who's a defensive monster, one of the most versatile defenders. With the whole coaching thing, like Lakers fans who wanted to get rid of Frank Vogel, like, do you know who your assistant coaches are? It's David Fizdale.
Yeah, it's David Fizdale first and foremost. I mean, and that's the one thing that's kind of hard to look past. And by the way, we've seen an audition of a David Fizdale coach team. We saw it during the last couple of games of December into January. That did not look pretty. That did not look pretty at all.
Okay, that day, that press conference he had, that day, like LeBron played center for the first time. If anyone was listening to it, they would think that like Wilt Chamberlain's record was being broken or something. That's how like effusive praise he was giving LeBron. And it's like, it's cool, but y'all still suck. Not that much.
Oh my god.
It's not that big of a deal. It's like LeBron can play whatever position he wants.
True.
The problem is your roster sucks. And even if they want to make a move now, like Taylor Horton-Tucker, Kendrick Nunn, whatever 2027 first round pick, those are your 3 assets that like have some value within the league, because everyone else is kind of on minimum contracts. Like Carmelo, I think would help a contender, but he's on minimum, I think.
Yeah, he is. Everyone with the exception of Kendrick Nunn, Taylor Horton-Tucker, LeBron, AD, and Westbrook are on minimums.
Yes, to like even make a trade possible, like you have to include Kendrick Nunn and Taylor Horton-Tucker, and that has to be kind of the foundation of any trade, unless you're going to move Westbrook. But who the hell is taking Westbrook right now? the Thunder are always available. You can send
Mm-hmm.
them back there, but you're giving up another 2 picks. I don't know how you're going to do that, but if you want to move Westbrook, that's the only way that's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Very true. Very true. I don't see it either. I asked this to my last guest I had on him, Josh Earl, for my Let's Make Moves podcast. I'm gonna ask you here now: is there a way the Lakers could put together a trade package for, let's say, a Christian Wood, with that Taylor and Tucker, Kendrick Nunn, like first round pick work for that? I know that there have been talks about draft compensation potentially going to Houston, but not for Christian Wood, for John Wall in exchange for Russell Westbrook, which I think is interesting. But what are your thoughts on that?
Do you really want Christian Wood?
Okay, so I don't know if I want Christian Wood as much as maybe the idea of Christian Wood, but like he's not having a horrible season. No, like I think that some of his like immaturity and issues on that end would be lessened on a veteran team like he would be here, where you need to like know your role. You know what I mean? He's someone that he's a 4 who loves playing the 5, which is perfect because then you don't have to worry about having a guy like AD, who is a 5 who loves playing the 4. You know, it works out well. He's someone that can shoot the ball and space the floor effectively, but loves to get in the pick and roll. I think it could work having a 2 big lineup with guys who aren't necessarily bigs in the traditional sense. They're switchable. They can both knock down shots, or at least the idea of them being that they can both knock down shots. I mean, Wood's a 35% 3-point shooter this year. Like, I do think that in a way this could work out for the Lakers, and I think utilize him much more effectively than Houston has done. I'm just thinking of I'm thinking of a potential quote unquote difference maker, but for like a low cost, because a lot of these guys that the Lakers are looking at, or that you would think would be good fits for the Lakers, aren't really necessarily attainable given what they have to offer. I think Christian Wood kind of falls literally on the margins in terms of like being an impact player, being a player who moves the needle, and also being a guy who would come, you'd have to drop an arm and a leg. Like for a guy averaging 17 points and 10 rebounds a game, if I can get him for that package, I'm not really complaining if I'm the Lakers.
Yeah. I mean, the fit is going to be a little awkward. Like, ideally, your best lineup is AD at the 5 and LeBron at the 4.
Of
And the
course.
thing you really need is perimeter talent. Like, your interior, like, the point is AD is supposed to solve your issue. So for the time being, like, let's just assume that AD is going to solve those issues. Because if he doesn't, you have a bigger problem. And that's AD. He's not the same player. So as for perimeter talent, like Justin Holiday would be nice, but like all these guys, I feel like other teams can put together better offers. Like you have to really like THT for this to work. And I don't know what THT is worth on the open market. Like he's an intriguing player, but he's on a negative value contract right now.
Mm-hmm.
So what team, unless the team really likes him, like what's the point of taking him in? Like, sure,
Honestly,
you can send him to the Pacers, but they're not going to give you Miles Turner.
no, that's what I mean. Like, I just don't. I think that like it's not really about Christian Wood being that great a guy. It's just like I'm not sure you put that in the trade finder if you're playing 2K or basketball GM or something else. I don't think that the guys that Lakers are being rumored to like be interested in are guys that are going to pop up for what you're putting out there.
Okay, 2K thinks Taylor Horton-Tucker is a future All-Star. Like,
Well, see, that's
I have like
I don't even play 2K like
I
that. I'm
have
a
played
basketball
around with
GM
the
guy
trade machine in
myself.
2K.
Uh-huh.
The Lakers guys are like obviously juiced up in 2K. Like, I was able to trade. Like, I tried getting Taylor Horton-Tucker in a first, or I think it was maybe Mitchell Robinson and someone else. And it's like, no, we need more assets in that trade. It's like, no, I'm
Really?
giving you the better player.
Yeah, like
assets. That's not how this works.
Well, see, this is why I'm more of a basketball GM player myself. I know I've talked to you about that because I am not a guy who can do. I'm just it's 2K, like you said. A lot of it, I think, is they are realistic to a point, in my opinion, right? But at the same time, you're right. Like a lot of the Lakers guys just have a reputation, just to the Lakers and fans are going to play. Like they come to like a really crazy like let's be real, like they get a lot more that they're expected for. If you're trading with them, they get a lot more. It's just a lot. It's just a lot, you know. And so that's why when I'm like, I don't know, at least, and that's what mind you, it's different as well. Like their trade thing isn't great, but like for example, I put Kendrick Nunn, Taylor Horn Tucker in a first round pick in the trade machine, right? And I was offered the really ridiculous return of DeAndre Ayton and Jalen Smith. Like that's not happening in anyone's universe. But you are getting like more like, how about we throw you, you know, Herbert Jones and Jackson Hayes, or you know, well actually I do have, funny enough, a Jeremy Grant trade there, or how about Bruce Brown and James Johnson, or can I interest you to lightly use Malik Beasley? You know, like you get some moves that are around there, but like again, like and that's what's weird with simulation games and things of that nature, is like the value of it is kind of based off of how the simulation looks at it. But you know good and well, I'm not going to get half of those packages for those guys, unless it only takes one, mind you, it only takes one team to go, hey, you know, that's the guy we're going to hitch our wagon to. At the same time, like most teams aren't like that. You know what I mean? Like there's a certain like school of thought generally among NBA trade circles for negotiations of that sort.
Is there a way to still get Buddy Hield from the Kings with Taylor Horn Tucker and Kendrick Nunn?
Yes, there is. I was just thinking of a Lakers trade that I brought up. Oh man, it's been another podcast ago. But there is a way. It was a 3-team trade. I remember the framework of that being where Russell would go to the Knicks. There'd be like a sort of package from the Knicks going to both the Kings and the Lakers, and mostly the Kings would give up Buddy Hield. Like that is I forget the framework of the deal now, of course, but like it's still a possibility. I forgot what needs to be staggered. But it can still very much happen. I doubt it does, but like it could. I just think at this point, Russell Westbrook will probably be involved. Like even
Yeah.
if he's not going to Sacramento in whatever permutation that this is, he would have to in order to make the money work. And so that's where you have issues, obviously.
Yeah, Russ is just. So I have a question for you. Do you think he should be benched, and do you think that could help him,
Who?
Westbrook?
So I've been thinking about this. I think that he should be benched, but I only think he should be benched when, like, let's be real. I think that he's entering the Allen Iverson stage, or Allen Iverson / Carmelo Anthony stage of his career, where a player who's well known for being a, you know, certain type of player is reaching that kind of NBA mortality where his role is shifted. And it's whether you're going to adapt to that change or be forced to adapt to that change. And I think we're kind of at the precipice of finding that out from Westbrook. So I think the easiest way to do that would be to put him in a position where if you're not helping the team to win, let's say you're having just a bad shooting night, or, you know, let's say that for whatever reason, you know, defensively you can't stay in front of your matchup, then yes, we are going to bench you and try to put out a unit that works better. You know what I mean? Like, yes, we're going to deploy you more situationally. And yeah, it's a shot to your ego. I understand. Yes, you know, we brought you in to be a third star. Third stars don't usually sit crunch time games, but at the same time, like, we need to do this in a way that I think preserves Westbrook's like pride and dignity, but also puts Lakers in the best position to win. The alternative is him getting to a point where some coach or Vogel for his job says, you know what, this isn't working. We're just going to make the move we have to make. We're benching you. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't do it outright, because Westbrook has been, I mean, obviously he's well liked in the locker room. LeBron and guys who have real cachet brought him in and want to support him in this journey, but he has been actively detrimental. So you play him in spots where, you know, he's no longer good enough to have to deal with, okay, good Russ, okay, bad Russ, like you did when he was in OKC, you know, or in Houston or in Washington. Now bad Russ is actively bad and good Russ isn't great enough to change like it was. So in this case, yeah, I think you kind of have to deploy it situationally. Like if he's having a bad game, get him out of here. If he's not, keep him going. But always start him and have him in that vein, because that way you are able to kind of do your best to maximize the effectiveness of him and also keep the culture okay among the team.
Yeah, my problem is I just like even if you look at a guy like Iverson can still get his own shot, and Russ unfortunately can't do that, or at least not well enough. Same thing with Melo. Melo can still get into his bag and still get a decent shot off. May not be the same level, but he can still kind of do it, and he's still a good floor spacer. So for me, like, what does Russ do if he's going to run the second unit, for instance? One, do the Lakers have enough bench guys to actually like put together proper second unit that doesn't involve one of the bigs of Dwight Howard or DeAndre Jordan, or if at least if it does, maybe just one of them. Please, I don't want to see both of them ever on the floor at the same time. If Kurt Rambis makes this happen, God damn it, I'm revoking all championships that Kurt Rambis has.
Honestly,
I would donate them to anyone else.
I would be right there in line with you where that to happen, because that would be ridiculous, just patently ridiculous. But honestly, I don't know. I don't get it.
Russ is just such a weird player that it's kind of hard to like. I know earlier, like people kind of thought like maybe this could be like the Dwayne Wade situation where Dwayne wasn't this elite floor spacer and he was a guy who needed the ball, but like Wade could still cut and do a lot of other things. And also Wade was a good defender. So he still brought values in other places. So for us, it's like either learn how to play off the ball, which unfortunately
I don't think he can. I don't think he will. I think it's too late for that.
We've had like years of evidence to say he can't.
Yeah.
So
where do you go from there?
Is can you be a good defender? And I think like if he's engaged, he has some moments, but he's not this ball hawk. He's never gonna be an elite defender, but like can you at least be checked in and like not just let Karis LeVert drive by you 30 times?
Yeah, knowing that that's the name of his game. That's his MO. Honestly, that would be a good target for the Lakers. I'd like Karis LeVert. Like, he doesn't totally fit as another guy who needs the ball and isn't a great shooter, but in terms of more consistent offensive punch, that would be someone I'd look at more.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't mean to take away from your point.
The Pacers think he's going to get them 2 first-round picks, so
I don't know what universe that is. Maybe 2K.
You can have 2 first-round picks. I'll give you number 30 and number 29. But
there you go. That's probably exactly what you're looking for. If you're, you said it. Like, that's exactly what you're looking for there.
But yeah, the Lakers, they have things to figure out. Like AD, if he comes back, like he might solve some issues, but fundamentally, this is still a improperly put together team, and they can blame Vogel all they want. What are your alternatives? Because if you fire Vogel's fine. He has his money, and he'll get a job somewhere else. Like, at least Dallas will call him and just bring him back with Jason Kidd. Because whatever Jason Kidd learned from Frank Vogel is working here. So Vogel will be fine. I'm not worried about him. But who are you going to hire? Are you going to hire Fizdale? You really want to go through that?
You really don't want to do that. If the Knicks tenure didn't
are you
get
gonna
that,
hire Kurt Rambis? Please don't.
No. Honestly, I almost want to see that for just the hilarity of it all, but also knowing that you might as well put me into an asylum now. I don't know. You're right. Like, I just don't know where they go from here. And I think that's what's the most frustrating part about it, because they are stuck in a holding pattern. You're right. Bringing back AD will only paper over some of the issues. And the funny thing about it is that the only issue that it really paper over would be the fact that the only issue would really paper over would be the fact that some of your backline defensive help would be there. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
aside
maybe
from
you're
that,
not the 26th defense. Maybe you're the 24th or the 23rd. I don't know what the Lakers are at this point. I stopped looking.
Oh, I last I checked, it was the later 20s, but I don't want to give myself any more depression tonight. Actually, I'm a glutton for punch. Let me check right now and just see where they are. Real-time radio here. Let me see, because I'm trying to remember now, and it's Here we go. So defensively, no, they actually climbed a little bit. Offensively, they slipped. They're 24th in offensive rating. They're 18th in defensive rating. So back half of the pack for sure. But yeah, that's where they're at. Man, this is rough.
You want to move on to a more positive team?
Yeah. Let's end on a high note. Let's do that.
Miami Heat.
Oh, the Lakers' next opponent on Sunday. Yes, good old Miami. Let's talk about it. What you got?
Are you ready to lose to Max Strus and Gabe Vincent
Oh,
and Omer Yurtseven?
You know good and well that I am delusional. I think Lakers will pull it out. But if I were to lose, I could think of no one better than Max Strus.
Yeah, so what the hell is going on in Miami with all these role players? Like, whoever is running their G League team or their player development needs to be getting a raise.
Dude, I'm telling you, yeah, they have some of the best
Whatever
development.
they're doing there is amazing. Like, Duncan Robinson is kind of expendable right now because Max Strus is better than him right at this point. And they just picked him up. He was on the Celtics at one point and they threw him away. And now Miami's like, hey, we can fix you. You can be a good part of our culture. Caleb Martin barely got minutes on the Hornets. Goes to Miami. Fantastic player. Gabe Vincent gets some development and he's good. And I think that last game was the first time they had Bam and Jimmy since like early December or late November. And Jimmy, when he comes back, is an MVP candidate. Bam is a solid defender and just a great player. Kyle Lowry, like this whole stretch should be like the advertisement for Kyle Lowry's Hall of Fame pitch should be just this stretch without Jimmy Butler, without Bam. He's just getting a bunch of guys to play well. And they're winning games like consistently. They're one of the best teams in the league. I think they could go on a real run the next couple of weeks with the uncertainty in Brooklyn about KD.
Yeah. It's very much in play. And you're right. Especially, I don't know. Let's go back to you mentioned Max and Max Strus and Duncan Robinson. Do you think Duncan will be moved in the come to trade deadline? There's a lot of contracts to move, but do you think that Miami is even considering it? Because he has had a relatively down year, coming just off of, I guess, anyone's standards of what he'd be.
Would he be allowed to? He just got extended, right?
Oh, you're right. Well, but wait, you got extended in yeah, did he get extension or was it just re-signed?
I can't remember, but
I'm looking now.
I think it might be re-signed, but
yeah, he signed a 5-year, 90 mil.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot of money, but
yeah, it's 15 mil this year, 16 hikes up to 18, 19 will be paid 19.8 at 31. I'm not gonna lie, I can see this contract going the ray of a Ryan Anderson.
The other guy is Davis Bertans, so I was thinking of.
Oh, that's another one too. Like a guy whose skill set you paid for, but then he immediately like regressed significantly in that skill set. And being that was one of the only things that he does, it really made him expendable, but also very expensive because of what he is. I mean, he's shooting 35% from three, not bad, but it's been 4 of 6 from three, 8 of 16 from three, 3 of 10 from three, 0 of 2, 0 of 8, 2 of 5, 3 of 8, 5 of 10. It's all over. Mind you, for his career, the dude's a 40% three-point shooter. This would be the worst. He's 34%. Sorry, dipped after tonight's loss against the Hawks, or last night's loss by the time whenever you hear this. But basically, it dipped to 34% on 8 threes a game. So he's taking the most threes of his career next to last season, but he's shooting at a clip just as low as his rookie season when he shot 28%, albeit on very limited attempts. He was 10 of 35 that year. So he's just not been that guy. And like, that's his real only purpose, unfortunately. Like, he's not doing a whole lot else. There's 11 points, 3 boards, and 1 assist, like 1.5 assists a game. Like, if you're not getting spacing and consistent scoring from him on the outside of the release valve, you're really not getting anything from Duncan Robinson. I mean, 6.6% rebound percentage. 7.7% assist percentage. Like, there's nothing there, y'all. Like, absolutely nothing. Especially for 83% three-point attempt rate. Like, come on, man. There has to be better. It just has to be more provided for the amount of capital Miami's forking over than what they're getting for Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that Duncan will turn around at some point, but in general, this team, just the way they play, like Spoelstra just gets guys who can pass, dribble, or shoot,
Yeah,
and
so well.
in their system where it's just people swirling around handoffs and cutting all the time. It's similar to the Warriors where like you don't have to run a lot of traditionally like skilled players
Mm-hmm.
as long as you have guys who just know how to cut and come around screens, playing dribble handoffs and drive and kick, and you can just run a lot. It sounds more complex, but it's really just a simple offense because people are just kind of doing common sense stuff, just moving, and you don't need to be an elite player to do that. So you can live with Max Struz, Omar Yurtseven, and just guys who are not like elite players and not your traditional role players, but with the Miami system, they can just play well.
Yeah, they can make it work. That is for sure. That is for sure. Um, that's I don't know. I think there's another topic for another day between development and which teams do the best job of getting players kind of off the scrap heap and making them into like really serviceable NBA players. I was talking about that with the friend, even with the Lakers. Like, you look at some of the guys that they've had, either drafted late in the second round, like Kyle Kuzma, or undrafted altogether, like Alex Caruso. And yes, you have to give credit to the players for putting the work in and becoming those players, but also to the Lakers for having that eye to the town. Look at Austin Reeves right now for the Lakers. You know what I mean? Like, look at what they've been doing there. That is, like you said, it just works. It lends itself well to that.
They're going to trade away Austin Reeves next year, though, right before
Uh,
his contract. They're going to find a way to trade Austin Reeves right before his contract expires.
dude, I'm telling
They'll
you,
find a way.
don't do that to me, dude. Don't do that to me. You're probably not lying, especially if Rob Pelinka is at the helm. But that's what's gonna make it worse. Don't say that. Oh my gosh, you gotta give me some hope. But
But
going
yeah,
back to
like
Miami,
he or his team up there in terms of development, there's a lot of solid teams. Memphis is one. Toronto's obviously like gold standard with Miami. But yeah, I'm curious, like if you had to do a coach of the year bout, like who would be your top three right now?
if I had to do one right now, I mean, obviously, you can't really go too far without looking at the Memphis Grizzlies, right?
Yeah.
So if you're looking at them, you're definitely giving some love to Taylor Jenkins. So he would have to be one. Monty Williams is up there as well. I mean, look at what he's done again. His continued improvement with these Phoenix Suns and the way they are where they are. Fine. After that, it's crazy to think because I'm not really high on this guy historically, but I think you have to look at JB Bickerstaff.
Yep.
So I look at those three first and foremost. Those would be my guys.
Okay. Yeah, because I think like there was a period a while back where there were just a lot of bad coaches,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of good coaches in the NBA right now. Like I would have those three. Some other guys that definitely deserve a shout out, like Billy Donovan with Chicago. He's having them play college basketball, and they're just having fun out there. Um, Eric Spoelstra just always has to be up there, just because like he's pulling off random lineups that just work, and he's getting everyone to buy in. So there's a lot of really good coaches out there, and if Frank Vogel gets fired, he can go be an assistant somewhere else, or maybe some new young coach gets a chance. But I hope Vogel doesn't get fired. Like the Lakers need to
I
figure
hope so.
this out.
He doesn't deserve it. He really doesn't deserve it, to be honest with you. It'd be beyond unfortunate. But also I just feel it coming and I'm already getting mad in anticipation of it. Already getting
Yeah.
mad in anticipation of it. But yeah, I mean, I think we had a good conversation. Shout out to Miami. We got to get back to that positive note. Shout out to Miami. We gave him some love. Looking at the way they've improved. Definitely looking at the Lakers to hopefully do something better than what they've done as of now. I don't think we either of us have the hope that they're going to do it, but I mean, it's definitely something that we can look at. Denver, please change it up a little bit here. Boston, same thing. But yeah, anything else you want to have before we do this again next week?
No, I think I'm good for now. Yeah, this it's a fun stretch of basketball to look at. There's been a lot of really good games. Memphis is obviously just a fun team to watch. That moment with Tony Bradley and Steven Adams was just absolutely perfect.
Oh my gosh, that was hilarious. I didn't like the fact that John was acting all fake tough afterwards, but like, give love to Steven Adams for being like the cuddly bear that you absolutely want no parts of.
I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been CJ McCollum or Dame, but there was a back when he was on Thunder. Uh, there's like a whole compilation on YouTube of Steven Adams just like nailing guys with hard screens and then like passing out. There was one against Pat Bev a while back, one against Dame, but I can't remember what happened, but he hit someone with a hard screen. It was either Dame or CJ, and they walk up to Steven Adams ready to yell at him. And he just turns and looks at them and they walk away. Like Steven Adams is not the guy you want to mess with. So Tony
No,
Bradley, like, he makes you look like a child. Tony Bradley's not a small guy.
he's 6'10",
Pretty
right?
big. Yeah.
He's 6'10", and he made him look like he was just a little kid. And I think it was funny. Jaren Jackson Jr. said afterwards that he's been in that situation before, and it's exactly as it's described.
Yeah.
Like he said, like
Steven
you
Adams,
really feel helpless.
like Steven Adams to me feels like he was on that grit and grind team, even though he wasn't. Like he would have been
Yes,
such a good person just to be on that team.
he's like a spiritual successor.
Which is funny because Zemo punched him in the face that 1 year in the
The guy who
playoffs.
was the catalyst of all that, exactly, and the reason why they even lost that year.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's funny to think about. But yeah, man, this is another fun one. I appreciate having this time to just talk shop with you in the NBA. Like you said, a lot of interesting basketball. Only more to talk about as the trade market heats up down the stretch here, and we also see more about these players. And like you said, but we're getting kind of the zenith of good basketball in between resting players and positioning for the playoffs and the play-in, and getting past the dog days of the opening night of the season, opening months of the season. Now we're in the thick of it for sure, and I'm looking forward to more fun conversation with you on this.
Yes, I always have to be here. Hopefully, we'll get another big trade like the Bull trade of the century.
Oh yeah, that cannot be that. That absolutely cannot be the end all be all for us here. Like I refuse that. I refuse having that be our lasting walk away of the trade deadline of the trade market. Remember that big that really crazy bull trade that really set the tone for really set the tone for how trades are going to be. No, thank you.
And then the one that got canceled and then Reed got moved again later.
Exactly. Another one. You said it. So that's not at all what I'm looking for there. But yeah, aside
I'm
from that,
curious
man,
if you had to pick a guy who's most likely to get traded in this deadline, who would it be?
if I had to pick one that's most likely to what? I'm sorry?
Most likely to be moved at this deadline, who would it be?
It has to be Jeremy Grant, right?
Jeremy Grant?
It has to be. I think that Detroit's definitely trying to. If I had to get someone who like has to be moved, I look at all these other teams and I could see them still being there. You know what I mean? Like I could see them still. I could see nothing shaking on that. I look at Jeremy Grant. I look at the noise that's been around about that, and I just see a move like having to be made. I don't know
All
if I'm
right, that
crazy
makes
for
sense.
that, but like I just thought there's been too much smoke around him. And honestly, if he's the only one that's moved, I see it. Like all these other teams, it kind of feels like they can be moved, but won't necessarily be moved. Like we've seen this dance with Sacramento before. You know what I mean? With Harrison Barnes, with Buddy Hield. So the fact that now we're throwing both of them around, okay, great. Philadelphia has been too long already of the season hearing about this. I don't know. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I really think they should, having a game where Joel Embiid puts up 40 points and you only get 17 points combined from your bench and lose after leading by 22. That's pretty rough. Like, changes need to be made. Additions need to be, added to this team. But I don't know if Daryl Morey does it since he's still obsessed trying to win the trade. So I look at Philadelphia as a team that could make a move but might not. Atlanta, maybe they end up saying that, hey, when we made the move for getting Kevin Knox and getting rid of Cam Reddish, there was addition by subtraction. So we made our move. Maybe they look at it that way. I think it'd be wrong, but I could see all these teams right now that we look at as buyers not doing anything. And all the teams that could potentially be sellers deciding to stay home rather than give up their, prized assets for a meager return. I could look at the Lakers who want to make a move under everything under the sun, but just don't have the assets to do it. We saw them with Cam Reddish trying to offer 2 seconds. I could see them going to any team and just having the lowest offer and not winning. So I guess like narrow
They
it
offered
down. Hmm?
they offered Tucker and Kendrick Nunn a first round pick for Jeremy Grant.
I mean, I think everyone knows that's like a laughable offer, right?
Oh yeah. I think the guy that's most likely to get moved is probably Eric Gordon, just because it's an easier move than Jeremy Grant.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy Grant still wants to be like this offensive hub of whatever team goes to. I don't know how that's going to work.
I don't either. And the Lakers are big about making these promises for these players who want to have these outsized roles and putting them there to the detriment of everyone else. Look at what they said about Andre Drummond. He wanted to start. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Forget the fact that we haven't had a horrible time, starting Marc Gasol. Forget the fact that he's probably a better fit. Like you're right. We're just going to do it. I don't understand. I can see the Lakers making that promise. Only problem is that Jeremy Grant's not going to be a buyout guy. Like, I highly doubt that.
Okay, did you just see Steph's buzzer beater?
I did. That was pretty dope. The step back, long two over Kevin Porter Jr. That was pretty solid.
Yeah.
I'll give credit to that. That was one that was pretty dope. But yeah, man, I think, like I said, we're gonna have to talk. Like I said, next week we'll probably talk about the Lakers Warriors. I was hoping they lost this game. It'd been a fun story to talk about how they're something after losing to both the Pacers and Rockets.
Buzzer beater.
Whoa, really? You know what?
He's hit a lot of like game really solid daggers, but I don't think I ever remember him winning one at the buzzer.
No, you're right. He hasn't. I keep looking at that OKC game. There was still time on the clock. Yeah, you're right. Like, nothing comes to mind as a buzzer beater for Steph Curry. Wow. I mean, as buzzer beaters go, this one's pretty mundane, but at least you have one. And also, to be fair, it's not like he doesn't have so much more to be, so much more that his highlight reels for everything would be crazy. Oh, yeah. But that's crazy that you're right. That's his first one. Wow. Well, there you go. The more you know. The more you know. I'm shocked by that, but also that's interesting. That is interesting. But listen, y'all, Anirudh, thank you again, man, for hopping on here. I do appreciate you as always. Listen, y'all, you know where to find Anirudh. It's an exclusive deal with Roundball Ramble. No, I'm just kidding. You can find him though on this pod. I gotta have you on Let's Make Moves, talk some more trade deadline front office centric stuff. But we get a little bit of everything as always. So we'll definitely make that happen, bro. But again, thank you for your time. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Happy to be here.
Definitely, man. You can find me y'all on Twitter at Corbin NBA. Check out Sports Ethos, like I say, on Twitter at Sports Ethos, online, sportsethos.com. Pretty simple, really effective. You'll enjoy everything that's there to be had. Don't miss up an opportunity there, especially as the trade deadline comes. From fantasy perspective, from general NBA perspective, from the mock trade deadline that we have going on over there with the Bird Rights podcast and the cool people that are involved in that. Even myself, desperately trying to make moves. And if you guys had noticed me bringing up Taylor Horton-Tucker, Kendrick Nunn, and the first round pick, the reason I said it so many times because I am actually in charge of the Lakers for this mock trade deadline, and I have been floating that out to everyone to no avail. So there is maybe just a little bit of bitterness in my conversation involving the Lakers and their trade haul, but all that being said, definitely make sure to check out Sports Ethos and get on board with all of that. Aside from that, y'all, please make sure, again, rate, review, subscribe. Definitely appreciate that. Want to get better, need the feedback to do so. It would really be huge for me. Aside from that, remember that Hoopball code for Manscaped, Hoopball20, HOOPBALL20 to get 20% off plus free shipping on your purchase at manscaped.com. But listen, y'all, I've been rambling for quite a minute, so I'm gonna let y'all go. For Anirudh, for myself, we are Frosty. Y'all stay frosty, and I will talk to y'all real soon. All right, y'all.